Let's start with Lassal. Lassal is fairly simple. He has a targeted punch. He also has a red circle AoE that you must avoid. This circle can be avoided by running in a circle itself. And yes, he will spam this for quite a while sometimes. His other moves can be avoided by running in a circle, all except for the punch. He also has an AoE frontal cone, a 180-degree cone to avoid. He also will summon minions after you've damaged him to a certain point, including 4 spitters. All of these minions can be killed and will make the fight easier. He will go back to his standard attack patterns afterwards. On top of these attack patterns, he also has a special ability where he will summon a rock. The rock itself can deal damage when it hits you, but if you stand behind the rock, you will avoid his giant AoE attack. Other than that, this boss is fairly simple. There's only one other mechanic, which is a targeted circle around you that if you continue the move or use a dash, you can avoid the damage that will pop up. Next boss is Vitaath the Shivering Death. She is fairly simple with a couple basic mechanics. First and foremost, she has giant circle AoE and a giant square rectangle that are obvious to dodge. These should be avoided at all costs as they can do high damage. She does have an animation that will appear once you have damaged her to about half. She will create minions as well as 3 angels that will shoot beams of rectangular straight lines at you. These minions can be chose to be killed or can be avoided. She will land either way and can start receiving damage again either way, but it is best to focus on the angels and let the minions die to AoE. After she's back, she has multiple other moves she can use, including the triple AoE that you saw there that shoots 3 kind of sweeping lines. She also has more minions that will continually spawn, as you can see, and a giant AoE cone that she can trigger as well. Other than that, she'll continue her standard attack patterns from here until she's dead. Do your very best to avoid the minions when summoned, and try to avoid these AoEs that will appear on the ground continually during the triple angel part of the fight. Gorgothra The Claimer has some minions you have to kill before the fight will start. The fight itself is a fairly simple tank and spank, but he does have some AoE cones to avoid. Other than that, you can just continually try to dodge his basic attacks. For the most part, he does a decent job of locking on, but his basic attack animation can be avoided. The AoE can be avoided as well just by standing in between them. This is phase 1, and he will do no other moves until damaged further. Once he actually says something, which is be still, you'll see he'll spawn some more minions and start other attack patterns. He will activate these dragon snake things on each, I guess they're cobra snakes is what they are, and these will shoot these square petrifies at you. If they actually land, they will petrify you in place. As you can see, they also petrify the minions as well. During this time, he will also activate a triple AoE, which is familiar if you've seen the toxic snake boss before. It's sort of the same AoE. These can do high damage, and he'll mix in his standard basic attacks all the time, spawning monsters and creating this circle poison AoE. If you have this AoE around you, you want to avoid being next to other players. Mostly this fight is about not dragging in your negative effects towards other players. As you can see, it brings a poison effect, and these snakes can shoot these giant petrification AoEs, which can also petrify people if you run it into them. So mostly be smart about the placement of the debuffs. You're going to notice he sprouts this giant egg and also does this giant AoE here. The eggs can explode, and the AoE here slowly encloses, meaning if you walk outside of the AoE, you're going to continually be dealt damage. So when this happens, stay inside of the AoE, clear out the minions, and keep focusing down the boss. He will also shoot a giant line AoE at this time, while also shooting the square petrifications. Again, avoid being petrified because he can combine that with the line to do some pretty fast damage. At the same time, if you get the poison, you want to walk it towards the outside so you're not poisoning the melee people trying to DPS the boss on the inside. That's pretty much it. Avoid everything that you can and try not to kill your teammates. The twins seem complicated, but are actually a pretty simple fight. When you walk in, there's going to be some minions to kill. Kill the minions and you're going to spawn the first twin. Now, you're going to fight one twin at a time until they're low enough. So first, you're going to fight the first twin. And what he's going to do is some very basic maneuvers. He has an AoE triple, which kind of matches his trident, and you just stand between the fireballs. That's pretty simple. He also has these red AoE circles that he will send out that you want to avoid as well. He has 4 orbs which will spawn. These will follow you, and all you have to do is walk fast enough that they don't hit you. He will also summon 4 skulls, which have a short range of fire. You can either walk with them in between and move on top of them once they move out, or you can just try to avoid them entirely until this phase is over. He will continue with his other attacks during the skull phase, so be sure to keep your eyes out. He can also summon minions out of portals as well. The minions are fairly easy to destroy. The hardest is probably the big giant AoEs that he can start doing once you have wounded him and before he summons his twins. Here is his twin now, Bel, and we are into the other melee portion of this game. He's going to be attempting to attack us with his melee while his twin is retreating. We just have to avoid the melee, or whoever's tanking, try to get behind him. Typically, if you're behind him, you're safe, except for his giant red AoEs and his whirlwind. He will do both of these, which there's his whirlwind, and he just attacks everyone in a circle, and you kind of have to either run away from him if you can't withstand the damage, or it's just a tank and spank during this phase. He has one maneuver where we hold his sword up and charge up. You want to avoid the red rings. It's very similar to the Cavern of Echo Dungeon. Once we get him wounded to a certain point, his twin will start assisting him with the AoEs as well, very similar to the first phase, so now we have to avoid both of them. During this portion, he can summon more melee minions, which will do whirlwinds as well. Eventually, his twin will fly in, and now we fully have a two-man fight versus both of them. They'll continue the same mechanics, kill them both, and the fight is over. Izilech The Misshapen is fairly simple. There's going to be minions at the beginning. You need to kill the minions. After you've killed the minions, he'll jump away and then summon more minions. So just keep fighting until the minions are dead and the fight will begin. He has two phases. He will start with a bow phase that will continually shoot very telegraphed, easy to dodge bow type of movements while summoning minions that are fairly weak and easily shotted. For this reason, you just want to walk in a circle, continually attack him from behind and avoid as much of the ranged materials as you can. He has a giant red cone that's obvious to dodge, a giant red circle that's obvious to dodge, that has a 4 square shot, which will happen, and then there is the rectangle AoE that's easy to dodge as well. For this reason, try to stay behind him and try to stay at a diagonal if you can, as well as it will avoid the circles into the 4 lines on the ground problem that happens when he jumps towards the middle. If you look on the actual floor here, you'll notice there is a line, and that is the same type of pattern that happens when he jumps. He just did it there a moment ago. So avoid these straight 4 cross type of lines, avoid these triple cones, do your best to stay behind him and continue the fight until he's 2/3 HP, at which point he swaps to melee. Same thing, same jump to the middle. However, one thing he'll do is he'll blast you in AoE, signifying that he has changed to melee. And now at this point, when he summons minions, they summon in an AoE and come in and close in on you, so be a little bit more careful. He's also going to attack via melee now and also have the red cone, but this time it's everywhere except behind him, meaning you really want to make sure you're behind him during this phase. He has other maneuvers. He still has the AoE jump with the 4 squares, and he leaves fire on the ground. So if you are trying to stay behind him as much as possible, make sure you're not also standing on the fire. Other than that, it's mostly a tank and spank. These are the basic mechanics. This is the hardest one to dodge, which is that red cone, and there's only one safe spot. Eventually, he's going to do a bonus maneuver. At approximately half HP, he's going to summon and snare you. At this point, you are stuck within the snaring. He's going to cast a gigantic move. If you do not get out of the spear cage and you stay within the cage, this move will essentially one-shot you and you will die. Break your teammates out of the cage or break yourself out of the cage to continue the fight. He can repeat this immediately, so just be aware of that. It is an RNG-based move. That's pretty much the fight at this point. Continue the mechanics until the fight is over, and congratulations, it's done. It's time for everyone's favorite bat boss, Ophinneb The Skin-Veiled. Once you kill the minions, you're actually going to summon 2 bat minions. These cannot be killed. They're on a timer. You must avoid these until the actual bats run out of time. At that case, you can then attack them again, killing the minions, and the boss will spawn. The Skin-Veiled has some pretty simple mechanics. She has a basic attack that you want to try to avoid. It is a fast cone. She also has a triple attack that you saw just there and can summon some bats during phase 1. Try to avoid the bats, avoid the giant red circle AoEs, avoid being in front of her with her cone attacks. That's the first phase. At approximately 2/3 HP, she says she will wear the Flesh of the Slaughter and change into phase 2. She will gain some additional attacks, such as this attack, as well as having rabid bats that can come out and pursue. These rabid bats do very quick damage, so if you're not expecting it, you can die very quickly from them. Run away from your party in order to keep the bats from killing your teammates. The boss itself will gain some additional moves during this phase, which can be hard to avoid, but most of them are skill shots. Continue to avoid the bats while allowing your team to deal DPS. Avoid the bats. Do not run the bats into your teammate. That's pretty much most of this mechanic. That's all of phase 2 until she does this giant AoE. This one's obvious. Get out of the giant AoE if you want to live. Phase 3 includes her standing up in the sky where you cannot hit her and summoning more AoEs as well as minions. Once she lands, she will spread out her new leg claws, and now you are into phase 3. This phase is pretty much the same, just avoid the bats, but with only one key difference. She will eventually say, "In blood spill is life," and summon these bats. These bats at first will continually do damage, but then will turn into bats that you actually need to kill. If you do not kill these bats and they get to her, she will heal significantly off the bats, making the fight longer. That's pretty much the whole phase of this boss. After she summons the bats, she will be stunned for a moment, allowing you to deal some damage. Her last mechanic is she will clone herself, which do have the versions of her abilities. This is very similar to that one boss that we get in Elder Rifts or in the dungeons, for instance. She has an AoE that you must stand in between at the last phase in order not to have damage received as well. And that's it. Enjoy the fight. Strangling Sun is a very interesting fight. Kill the minions in order to spawn the actual boss. You have an ally with you that is a Frost Mage. The boss itself is a Fire Boss, and the obvious consistency between the Frost Mage and the Fire Boss will come into obviousness here in a moment. In phase 1, it's fairly simple. He's going to shove his hand out and throw a very slow-moving AoE. He also can summon these heads on either side. You cannot kill the heads, and they will continually shoot randomly in a circle as well. Try to avoid the giant circle that happens. It can change targets. These circles will basically, the big one will be him jumping, the small one will be them laying fire. This is phase 1. He'll summon some minions. This part's pretty chill. After you get him to phase 2, then it gets a little bit more difficult. Once he makes some noise, we're now in phase 2. He'll knock everybody back, and he will actually start freezing your Frost Mage. You want to make sure she's unlocked, as you're going to need her for later. There will consistently be these fire AoEs. You want to avoid these fire AoEs. He'll also do this circle triangle shot. This is very similar to the dungeon mechanic from Cavern of Echoes. Just run in a circle and avoid it. DPS if and when you can, and continue. He does some of the same attacks like the jump from phase 1 as well, and there's minions to deal with. Phase 3 gets a little bit more difficult as he starts doing this giant AoE, which is even harder to avoid. If you stand near Nisa, you can stand within this frost shield and use that to continually DPS the boss. This is what makes this boss mostly a tank and spank. Minions will appear consistently, though. You do have to deal with them. He will stay burn anew once again. Now we're into the final phase where he will do more additional attacks. There's a continuous sort of panicked type of attack that he'll do in the front there, which will attack multiple times. He will freeze her once again, and we continually have to unlock her. And you'll also summon these eggs that you can see here. These eggs will blow up, throwing AoE red fire that you're going to want to avoid. Luckily, it gives you pretty far advanced notice, so you don't have to go memorize where all the eggs are spawned at, as they are random. He's eventually going to do this giant fire AoE, all the while more eggs could be going off. He can mix and match different attacks, even doing the original ones. He'll eventually jump to the middle, say, "We leave nothing." At this point, it's going to get a little bit more scary as he's going to start summoning some lava you can see from all sides while doing AoEs. He's going to continue doing his attacks and summoning lava. At this point, most people are DPS racing him to get him killed. However, if you make it all the way to the very end, Nisa will push back the fire. At this point, these are all of the mechanics, so rinse and repeat until the boss is down. The Crawling Woe is another one with some interesting mechanics. Start by killing the minions to summon the boss, and now phase 1 has began. Avoid the giant red circles. They will pause right before they explode, giving you a chance to avoid them. He will also do a red sort of splitting AoE. This is like a lightning from the sky. It will move randomly. Just run away from him during this time is the easiest way to avoid it. His basic attack is a very fast-paced AoE, so the basic attack is almost the hardest one to avoid. This part's fairly simple as long as you just sort of walk away from him, stay away from him. You're not going to get hit by that. They disappear fairly quickly, and the red AoE circle is more scary than, more bark than its bite, so this part's not too bad. He can summon some minions that you'll have to deal with as well, so just be aware of that. During this phase, there's going to be even more red circles to avoid. So you're going to have red circles that have these bombs sort of on them. You don't want to really walk into these. They will deal damage. There's a big red circle, and then you're going to have your rectangular line bars to avoid as well. He will eventually do this giant black circle and say how eager you are to proceed. Welcome to phase 2, where the red circles are even more red. He will send out shooting red balls of AoE you have to avoid, as well as making a triangle clone of himself that you're going to have to avoid. If you walk straight up, it's the easiest way to avoid it. He'll summon minions, so just keep at sort of a north, south, east, west type of reticle. It'll be the easiest way to avoid this. He'll send out some AoEs as well. Just keep moving. During this phase, you can absolutely continually deal damage to them, and that's how you get this phase to stop. So while you're avoiding these, try to get to the boss and attack them in between attacks if you can. After a while, he can eventually make 4 clones of himself, and so it's a little bit more difficult. He can do a half frontal cone, which can do some pretty significant consistent ground damage. He will eventually call a giant red circle you're going to want to get out of and then walk back into. This is the only place that you will not receive damage is in this circle here, and now you're going to DPS race him down. He will continually spam red circle AoEs, reds from the sky, rectangular lasers as well. He has all of his moves during this portion. One annoying part is that this guy here, this minion, can throw a blue rectangle, which can grab and move you, which during this, see that one, during this phase when he's doing these AoEs can cause you actually to die. So be careful of that while it's actually closing in on you. That's pretty much this boss fight. However, at this point, you're just going to DPS it down and the fight is over. The next is the Tamer of the Fallen, which has some mechanics I've seen people mess up consistently. However, they teach it to you right in the beginning. You have to kill the minions. The minions will fill this pillar, allowing you to continue forward. This boss will start with some minions to kill and the boss herself. You'll notice the HP isn't really that scary and the boss itself isn't actually that bad. However, there's one key mechanic people mess up. When the person goes invisible, you cannot damage the boss anymore. However, you can see things like the Echoing Shade are still trying to attack it. There is some cone attacks that will happen, etc. However, what you need to do is bring the minions over to the pillar, kill the minions, allowing this circle to happen. When this circle happens, congratulations, the boss will now walk into it and become a person that you can attack once more, allowing you to continue the DPS. Other than that, this boss is a very simple mechanic. You would avoid the giant cones like these ones, you would avoid these circles, and you avoid anything that looks invisible ghost, as you cannot attack that. Anytime something's invisible ghost looking, it is physically not able to be attacked. So you tank and spake down the boss, it will swap, and now there's minions like these ones. You can now go and kill these minions, which will summon all of their spirits into this altar. Now the boss can be attacked again. So anytime you're in this phase, just go kill more minions. There you go. Boss is able to be attacked again. It's pretty much that simple. Repeat this process, and that is the entire boss fight. There's a couple moves that are from the other bosses. I mean, obviously the giant circles, etc. But you also have these skull heads, like from that previous boss. I think it was the twins that had that. And you're going to notice there's some minions that will dash straight down. You have to avoid, or side to side like that as well. So be careful of these circles. Be careful of these cones. But the major mechanic in this fight is luring them to the pillars and killing the minions near the pillars in order to make the boss activatable and be killed again. If you guys aren't clearing the boss, that's what's happening. It will split. In the times that it's split, you do have to go kill the clones. This part can be a little confusing as well. I've seen people confusing these clones for the actual invisible looking ghost guys and looking for minions to kill. Nope. What you have to do is you've got to go kill all the clones that keep duplicating. A little bit of Loki thing going on here, but that's the only other complicated bit. That's it. Rinse and repeat these mechanics. Avoid the consistent attacks from the boss. Lure these minions over here. Have them turn on the altar. And then go back to attacking the boss once the altar has been activated. Rinse and repeat. Congratulations, you beat the boss. The Warmth-Feaster has one simple mechanic, which is displayed by the minion waiting for you when you arrive at the boss. Once you kill the minion, the actual boss will appear, but the minion will give you a chance to understand the mechanic. You're going to notice that I have a blizzard freeze on me right now. What I need to do when I am almost dead from the freeze is walk over to the campfire and have the campfire melt the freeze off. This would seem like a fairly easy mechanic. However, there is one major problem with this, in particular when soloing this boss, and that is that the Warmth-Feaster himself will not only cast a blizzard, but the blizzard will be located around him and he will chase you. The blizzard also shuts off the campfire and freezes over the campfires, meaning you must destroy a block of damage. Let me show you here. At first, it's just a tank and spank until you damage him enough. Now he's going to cast the blizzard, which will begin the freeze here. One moment. Now he will cast the freeze. When he casts the freeze, this freezes over the campsites as well, making it very difficult as a solo player to be able to undo the campfire. So what you want to do is keep him away from the campfire, so that way you're not getting interrupted by the other minions, etc. Or you can lure him to one side, try to sprint your way to the other while having either Echoing Shade clones, a Hydra proc, even a taunt, anything else to try to distract the minions, etc. So that way you can have enough time to be able to unlock the campfire. The most important part is when you're activating the campfire, you can be interrupted, so it is frustrating to try to activate the campfire. Also, if you activate the campfire and the blizzard touches it, it turns the campfire off. The reason that this is so difficult as solo is because if you are melee, for instance, and you need to attack him and get within range, what happens is once you fully stack the freeze, significant damage starts happening to you even when not within the blizzard. You can notice here I'm dying pretty much instantly. The only way to reset this is standing by the campfire or actually dying and being revived. Once you are revived, you will once again start the timer of the frost. Because this is pretty much a tank and spank with this mechanic, this mostly makes this a combat rating check and a DPS race with players, making this boss the easiest just to stand in place and kill, and people have some insane like 9 second, 6 second records on kills because this boss is pretty much just a DPS race down. So avoid the blizzard mechanic if you can, DPS down the boss, and that's all there is to this one. That is every Helliquary boss explained. If you enjoyed this video and the effort put into it, consider liking the video to help me out for free, or subscribing, which helps me out massively. Love you all. Thank you for watching this video.